What's up, guys? As you can see, I'm back home. No more Budapest for now, but today I'm playing the online event, the chess.com online event, which is only open to grandmasters, and therefore it's a super strong event. Last time I've also played, and there I performed pretty well. I entered the Division 3, and then only lost the I think it was the third match against Sindarov in the tie breaks. So yeah, really looking forward to this match today. It's at 5 p.m. Central European time, and I think I still need to check, but I think it's like maybe 9 rounds and 10+2 time control or something. And it works like this: if you have a placement in, I don't know, I think it's like top 15 or something, then you're Division 1. If you're in the top 30, you're Division 2, and in top 50 or 60, you're Division 3. I think it's something like this. So you will need +1, so 5 out of 9, then you're qualified for sure. Even with 4.5 out of 9, you do have some chances to qualify. But yeah, it's a super tough event. Last time I think I scored +1 in the end. There I beat, I think, like Isipenko, Idani, and many very strong players. So if you have a good run, then it's doable. But yeah, let's just see how it goes. Just wanted to give you another update, keeping the whole format from the Olympiad as it was. And yeah, I think I will see you later. See you then. What's up, guys? I'm just now finishing up my preparations. It's now, I think, like 3:30 p.m. The tournament starts at 5 p.m., but how it usually works with this event is that you have to join some Zoom meeting half an hour before. So you have to set up 2 cameras, one from the front and one from the side. So I usually just use my laptop, my webcam, to record myself from the front, and the other cam, I just use my phone and join the Zoom meeting there and just place it on the side. So they are very careful when it comes to this anti-cheating in this online event, which I also really like, because simply there's a lot of money at stake in this event. So I think it's very important to take all precautions you can to just avoid cheating at all costs. And yeah, they are also checking your screen, so you have to share your screen. You cannot be muted during the Zoom call, so they can technically listen to you if you are speaking to someone also, or so on. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this. I like that they're taking this pretty seriously. So yeah, I will just finish some preparations now for the event before I went for a walk. Briefly went into my calisthenics park. So yeah, see you after the event. Unfortunately, I cannot stream the event. Technically it's possible, but simply my computer cannot handle it, because I have to share the screen, I have to have the camera. So if I then, on top of that, if I'm streaming, I tried it last time, but my laptop was just almost getting on fire, so I don't want that to happen during the event. So I'm trying to improve my setup day by day. So I will have a very strong PC soon, hopefully. If I have that, probably it will be possible to stream. But yeah, for now I will later on record a recap for the event. So yeah, wish me luck for the event, and I will see you afterwards. Before events like this, I try to get at least some sort of exercise, or at least go out. So I went for a short walk, and then I went to my favorite calisthenics park near my home. I didn't do much, just because I don't want to be like fully exhausted before the game. But I just did a few pull-ups. So yeah, not that much. And then, because I couldn't do many pull-ups at all, I just went for these dead hangs, which I like because it just stretches your spine. But yeah, it wasn't intense at all. I didn't have much time when I got home, but I still checked the most important things, which then turned out to be quite useful in the event. What's up, guys? I just finished the tournament and I'm very happy overall. As you can see, these are the final standings. I finished in 56th place with 5 out of 9 points. I had extremely strong opposition as usual. In the first round, I played Rasulov. I won that game, then I lost 2 in a row, then I won a couple, and then in the end 2 draws.
So yeah, pretty happy overall. Tomorrow, if I checked correctly, my opponent is Rasmus Svane from Germany. Very strong grandmaster, especially in online blitz and rapid. His classical rating is, I believe, usually like 26-30. So tomorrow is gonna be this knockout match. I didn't even explain the tournament format, which is not so easy to grasp. At least it was for me when I started playing these events. So if you have the placement, so first of all, 69 players qualify. So if you're 69th, you're lucky, you're in the next stage. And from 69 until 30, I think, or something like this, or 31st, you're in Division 3. Then I think 15 players from 30 to 15 or something are in Division 2. And from first placement to 15th placement are in Division 1. And Division 1 is obviously the best. Then you can allow yourself to lose, I think, 2 matches, and then you would be in Division 3. If you lose in Division 3 already, like for me, for example, if I lose in Division 3, then I'm completely knocked out. So this is how the tournament format in general works. And yeah, let's go through all of the games, at least briefly, and yeah, I will see you soon. All right, so let's have a look at the first game, which I played against Vuga Rasulov. By the way, these ratings which are here are not correct. I think they're just calculated by your chess.com performance, like rapid rating. But still, my opponent is pretty strong. He's like 25-30, a very experienced grandmaster from Azerbaijan. Let's jump right into the game. It was a pretty standard opening. It was this kind of triangle Slav. And yeah, my opponent went for f5, this stone wall now. Aiming to have this outpost on e4 with the knight, which often jumps to e4. But the downside, of course, is that the square on e5 is permanently weakened. So this was all pretty standard. Now b3. The whole point is I want to go bishop a3 to exchange these bishops, because bishop on d6 is very active, and my bishop on c1 doesn't do much at all. So I really want to go bishop a3 in this position. He went queen e7. I still went a4. Of course, it weakens the b4 square, but it doesn't matter that much. I just really need to get rid of this bishop from c1. This was the whole point. He went a5 to fix the square on b4. Still bishop a3. And knight d7 already a bit inaccurate. I think he should just castle here. The point will also be shown because he played knight d7, I took, and now also have this very instructive option with c takes d5, and usually black wants to recapture with the pawn, but now I can just take on f5, so the knight is not placed perfectly on d7. This was one option, but I did not see this idea. Obviously, if I would have seen it, that I could take here, and he has to take back with the c-pawn, which he doesn't want to, then I would have gone for it, but I went knight c3 fairly quickly. So I missed this chance, but still. Now, pretty instructive moment again. I regrouped the knight to f4, and my point, as it happened in the game, now I played bishop e2, and now the idea is knight d3, and then I want to occupy this weak square on e5. Yeah, now I decided to take on e5, not that he has maybe some options with c5. I actually thought that he would take with the c-pawn for some reason. When I'm still better, yeah, I will go something like bishop b5 probably, and yeah, the square on e5 is just a permanent weakness. So yeah, he went e5, which is probably the best move. Bishop e2, as I've mentioned, knight d3 now. And yeah, now knight e5, the engine said it was not the best choice. The engine went for something like h4 and then possibly g3 just to stop all counterplay here on the king side. But knight e5 seemed logical. Knight f6 now, bishop b5. And here he should go, this was pretty standard everything, and now he took on d4. The engine liked something like knight g4 at some point, putting pressure on f2. But yeah, he took on d4. Now I took. By the way, point of queen a1 was just I'm preparing rook c1 just to fight for the c file. So now he took. Takes, queen takes d4, and queen c5. This was all logical. But yeah, queen c5 actually knight d7. He ran into this. So therefore, the computer says this is still fine, but not with how he followed up. So maybe it's better not to play queen c5 right away, even though black's position is already not very pleasant. He has this isolated pawn. This is kind of a weakness. Bishop on b7 doesn't do anything much. So here I was already feeling pretty good about my position. Queen c5, knight d7, and I think here he made the blunder with g6. But honestly, it's already pretty hard. I don't really see what he can do. Let's see what the computer comes up with. he just goes for some active play. He takes. I thought I will take this pawn, but after rook c3, bishop f5, knight d2, yeah, he will pick up the pawn on b3, and he will have some chances to save the draw, I think. But yeah, he went g6, and now I took this pawn on b6, which is very logical, but I could have played f3 when he can just resign, actually, because now if he moves the knight, then knight on f6 is simply hanging, and if he takes on d7, I can take back, and now the rook and the knight are hanging, and if the rook counterattacks, then I have bishop b6 check, and on the next move I will just take. So this would have been an easier way for me to win the game. I took on b6, and it was still more or less winning, I think, all game long. I was just a bit worried in the start that my knight could get trapped here because it doesn't have any way to come back. But then I saw this plan with pushing b4, when my knight on b6 is actually very useful and not in any danger to get trapped at all anymore. Yeah, here rook b2 was also nice just to control the second rank. And now I went knight c2 to kick out this rook from behind the pawn. And now I brought my king back. I guess here the computer says that a5 maybe is even better, and then I'm just pushing the pawn. But yeah, I went for king e1 just to kick out the rook, and it's still winning, knight d4. And here, after takes, he went for this blunder, king d8, and now after knight d6 he just resigned because I have the fork on king and rook, and he's just losing material. Still, his position is lost. Of course, he could have fought a bit more, but I think I would just slowly push the pawn, rook a2, a5, a6, and it should sooner or later win. So I was very happy with the first game, pretty clean win, and yeah, let's jump right into the next one. The next game I played against Pranav V from India. He's very young. He's, I think, born in like 2007 or something, and already 26 plus. So very tough opponent. Let's jump right into the game. It was the Berlin defense, my most solid opening, and he went for the anti-Berlin with d3, bishop c5, and now he went for this structure here, where I had the game in the Olympiad, which I lost pretty quickly, and after knight d2, I didn't go for bishop e6, which I played in the Olympiad against Benjamin Gledura, but I went for my my pet line knight d7, which of course I kind of regretted not to have played it against Gledura. The point is just I will protect the pawn on e5 right away, and later on I will often I have the idea just to build up the center and then some slow play, as we will see in the game. So castle, knight c4, now rook e8. I still wanted to wait with f6, because if f6 right away, then white often has this idea with knight h4. And then to push slowly king h1, f4, which he doesn't have this option if I didn't move f6 yet, because the queen still controls this diagonal. He still went king h1, now a5. I want to gain space, so logically he stops me from doing so. b6, bishop e3. I went bishop f8 back. Actually, quite instructive moment. The computer always likes to go bishop b4 here, and then to push b5 for black, and just to fight for counterplay on the queen side. And it's important to have the bishop on b4 to have the pawn on a5 protected. Let's say I go bishop f8 and white does something like h3. Now b5 doesn't work because white can always take the pawn on a5. So this is one moment where I could have maybe played more precisely. But I went bishop f8 back, and now he went for this plan with rook g1, which kind of surprised me. It is often an idea for white to start an attack here, but here it seemed a bit slow. I went for c5, g4, and now knight b8. Very usual regrouping. Again, not the top choice of the computer, but it seemed very logical. I'll just bring my knight to d4. And he went fully for the attack, but it just doesn't seem like the right way. Now I have the bishop here, and his attack is not going anywhere much. And b5 was still good. I'm starting a counterplay on the queen side. He took. And yeah, this was, I think, also still alright, even though g6 was not the best move. Yeah, the computer went for something like bishop b4 here. But I just wanted to stop knight f5 at all costs right away. Now queen g3, I think this was all pretty okay, a4, and yeah, here I went for the wrong plan, which was to eliminate this knight on g4. It seemed very dangerous for me to let the knight into f6 or h6, but I think the computer just doesn't really care. He goes for something like rook b8, and if knight g4, just king h8, but as a human it looks pretty scary, but yeah, I guess the computer can somehow hold everything together here and then start some counterplay on the queen side. yeah, I went back and I took, which is still somewhat alright, but a3 was the bad decision. I should instead go for something like this and keep this pawn on the board, when I always have some counterplay also on the b2 weakness, and if b3 I always have a3. When the pawn on a3 is actually more of a strength in my position. Yeah, a3, and then he took, and now he has this nice square for the knight on c4, and here I was already under a lot of pressure. It was still somewhat alright, and I was fighting pretty well in the endgame. The next critical moment came around here. I brought the king d7, rook a6, and here, this I totally missed this idea with e5 and e6, very strong. Otherwise, I thought I have counterplay with rook h8, rook h5. But yeah, e6 was strong, takes, knight e5, king e8, and here he took on e6. Again, good, yeah, because if he takes first on g6, then I have bishop d6, and then he will not get the pawn on e6. But actually, I defended pretty well here. Rook d6, the point was takes, and if he takes knight g6 now I have bishop takes g5, and he cannot take with the king because I have f3 and the pawn is suddenly queening. So this was the whole defensive plan. Knight f3, he went back, and this position is probably a draw actually. But I blundered it later on. With being low on time, it's very hard to defend. But let me just show you later on. He just pushed the pawns. And his issue is that the pawn on g5 is always a target. And if these two pawns disappear, then it should be quite an easy draw. But here the mistake was that I stayed passive with the bishop on e7. And now I just cannot move anything at all. And he just brought his king over, and I'm just in Zugzwang here. I cannot move anything. If king f7, just king d7. And the game is over. So my last chance here was after knight e6 to go bishop a5 or bishop b6, and then to stay behind the diagonal. And I briefly checked it. If he comes now with the king, then it's important for me as well to bring the king. I will go something like here, here, let's say here, bishop e3. It wasn't bishop e3. King d7 first, king b4. Why is this losing? Bishop g1, king b5. And I have to have this position. Okay, that's also hard to understand. If this position black to move, then I'm losing. Let's see. Why? Because it's Zugzwang then, yeah? Okay. I mean, very tough endgame to defend, but this is probably an objective draw at least. But yeah, I didn't manage to hold this one, which was also okay. I mean, my opponent played well. In the middle game, I had my chances. Should have maybe not played g6. Maybe went for some immediate stuff with a4. But yeah, I think a good game overall, and in the end, my opponent just prevailed. So yeah, let's have a look at the next one. The next game was super painful for me because, as we will see, I was winning out of the opening, and then I just didn't manage to win the game and even lost. I played knight f3. By the way, I played against Alexander Predke, a very strong grandmaster, originally from Russia, but he changed federations to Serbia. He's now 2680 or something. And yeah, it was this type of double fianchetto for black. And I went for rook e1, which I also give in my chess-based course. The idea is just to push e4. So if castle, I would go e4 and then d4, and I have a very nice advantage. So we went knight c6 first, when now e4 is not as accurate because he can stop me from playing d4. For example, knight d4 himself would be an option. So now the point is now to go d4. These pieces exchanged. This is all still somewhat normal. e4, castle, and now e5, knight e8, bishop f4. And here he went for this blunder, knight d6, which he just thought I cannot take on d6 because the queen is hanging. But I anyway took, and now he didn't take back, because if he takes, then d takes e7. And if queen e8, I have bishop d6. And I will just take on f8, and I will win a lot of material like this. So he tried to play on with e6. By the way, just to mention, black should probably go for something like knight c7, knight d6, or d6, but he's already in a somewhat passive position. I think that rook c8 was inaccurate. I think he should go castle first, e4, d6, and yeah, then we get this type of position where white is maybe slightly better, queen d3, b3, bishop d2, something like this, or bishop b2. But it shouldn't be all that bad for black. But yeah, he blundered this this move, and yeah, just imagine I lost this position. I'm just a clear piece up, but yeah, I was just panicking at some point. I mean, this was all good. This was all fine. B5 takes C5. I mean, so many things are winning. I can go bishop D4. I could also take, I guess. But yeah, I went for this. This was still all right. I can also take on B5. I mean, this is so easy. He just takes here, and now I just take on D7, and he just resigns. Yeah, there's nothing for him. I will just push the pawns. I went queen c2 back. This is also all good. It was fine in general, I think, but around here it got out of control. He only has 2 pawns, but now he took the third one. He has some counterplay, but of course it's all of it is winning. Maybe rook c4 is the easiest way. I'll just try to exchange this rook, and then he has no more counterplay. Instead I went rook d1, d5. I'm threatening rook c7 here, so he went d5. I infiltrated with the rooks, and I thought it's just game over here. But he came up with resources after resources. King g2, maybe queen g3 is easier. I'll exchange queens, and then, I mean, this is just so easily winning. I don't know why I played king g2 in this position. King g5, rook h7, and now I thought it's simply checkmate on the next move. h4 is coming, king f6, rook f7. But he played queen e4, and then I realized that the king is running to e5. And now it really got out of control. I could have taken on e4 and still it's just completely winning, but I gave check first. I took now. And yeah, here being on seconds, somewhere I messed it up. This was also the mistake. Rook f6 is probably the easiest here. And I will just pick up some pawns here. If e5, now rook g7, and he can just resign. I will take the pawn on g6. But yeah, this happened, and now it's already a draw. He can already give perpetual. But he now played for a win, which was actually not a bad idea, huh? Because he will always have perpetual probably. But he already felt like, yeah, maybe it's going into the wrong direction for me. And again, here he played on, which was not a good decision objectively, because now I'm winning again. But yeah, okay, the game was now just a total mess. B5, again, probably winning, but I went h5. I thought h5 here might be smarter, yeah, right away. But anyway, played h5 now, take on g6, f4, and just total mess. With seconds on the clock, it was not easy at all. And still a draw here. Still a draw. Now it's winning for me. Yeah? This was the final blunder. But then somehow I lost this position, being with seconds on the clock. Here I took with the rook, and somehow still I lost this. If queen d4, this is probably the easiest. Queen d4 check, king h1, and queen d5. Okay, not entirely easy. But yeah, I have a big threat here on g2. But this was also alright, but here I have to find queen c6. Okay. Why doesn't queen... if queen b7, now he has queen e6 check. So that's why queen c6 is winning here. Instead I went for rook e3, and now I'm just, yeah, in quite some trouble. Still, what a position, yeah? Like 3 queens on the board, completely insane. I went for rook e4, and now he just checkmated me. I wonder if I had some more chances here, because it didn't feel entirely clear. Computer says queen e4. And this position... I've never seen anything like this. Probably it's lost, but yeah, definitely better chances than what happened in the game. So yeah, pretty painful loss overall, but I'm happy that I was able to come back in the following rounds, as we will see now. So in round 4, after this very tough loss against Predke, I played against Maciej Klekowski, grandmaster from Poland. Let's jump right into it. I went for d4, and we got the Queen's Indian. I had the white pieces, and here I went for this nice line rook e1. The point is just I don't want to play knight c3 right away when black has knight e4, but I will prepare it, and there are some tactical motives sometimes where rook e1 is also very useful in general. He went for a5, and now I freestyled. I just went h4. Point being, I still don't want to go knight c3, because then he has knight e4 ideas, or bishop b4. And h4 is always useful here, just gaining space on the king side. And now he went for d5, takes. And now this h4 is really playing into my hands because I'm often stopping h6, g5, and I have g4, g5 ideas later on, as we will see. So this whole opening concept worked pretty nicely for me. c5, rook c1, e3, h6, 95. This is the whole plan for white. And now I have these ideas with g4, g5, just to increase the pressure on the pawn on d5 if I kick out the knight on f6. Knight c7, now g4. The computer also suggested knight g4, which I didn't think about at all during the game. Again, I want to exchange this knight, and then the pressure on the pawn on d5 will be much harder. Also, I'm threatening to take on c7, take on f6, and then the pawn on d5 would already be hanging in some positions. But I went for g4, which seemed logical. Takes, knight e6, bishop g3, and here knight d7 actually already a blunder. I saw that something like knight takes f7 could work, but I was just lazy to calculate it. But it seems that this is winning, and now knight takes d5, and the black king is just getting mated here in the center of the board. So yeah, this would have been a nice way to finish the game, more or less. But instead, I took on d5 right away. Knight takes e5, d takes e5, and now bishop takes h4. And here I calculated this line which he played. I already calculated it at this moment actually, when I took on d5. And yeah, this knight f6 move was nice. Bishop takes f6. If gf6, I thought I can take on b7, bishop g3, bishop a8, and I'm winning an exchange at least. So yeah, this bishop f6 was good, bishop b7, and now we have all these counter attacks all the time. His rook is hanging, now he's also attacking my rook. But in the end, I think this endgame which happened was forced after bishop c6, takes, and now rook c8, again, another very nice resource by my opponent. And now rook c1, knight d4, and here he's winning back the bishop. But he's still under some pressure here. Again, this sacrifice before would have been a much cleaner win, but here he's also under some pressure. Rook c4, important not to blunder knight e2. Forcing him to take with the knight, and now I'm simply moving these pawns and I'm bringing my king. So this was all good, king e3, king e4. He went for g6, rook c1, intending rook h1 to target the pawn on h6. And here he went for knight takes e5, which is very logical, but after f6, I have rook d1 check. And now he has to go back to c8. If he goes to e7, I can simply move the bishop. So yeah, he has to go to c8 when here rook d5, and he's probably lost because this pawn endgame is losing for him because I have king f6 and king g7, and I'm queening first. So yeah, this is probably lost, but he went for king c6, which loses right away, and after rook d6 he resigned because I'm just taking the pawn on f6 on the next move. So yeah, again, pretty happy with this game as well, especially considering the fact that I lost this very painful game against Predke before. So yeah, let's have a look at the next game. Then in round 5, I played against a very strong Turkish grandmaster, Mustafa Yilmaz, pardon me. I had the black pieces, and he went for c4, knight f6, knight f3, e6, knight c3, and here I decided not to enter the main lines with d5, but I went for the sideline bishop e4, which I didn't really prepare it, but I saw it some time ago, so I just thought I would give it a try. Queen c2, castle a3, and he gets the bishop pair, but in exchange I have some small lead in development, and overall I have quite a solid formation here. g3, e5, bishop g2, I went a5 with the idea of gaining space here on the queen side and also stopping b4. And here he went for d4, and I thought for a bit and just went knight c6, just thinking that taking on e5 would be dangerous, but probably turns out that I have nothing here. After rook e8, he has queen f4, when yeah, there is not much compensation for me here at all. So this was kind of a gamble. Instead, I should have just went e4. When the knight moves, let's say to d2, then I go d5, and I have quite a healthy position here, probably around equal. But yeah, knight c6, he did not take on e5, which of course was pretty good for me. He went for d5, knight e7, b3. And here I went for c6, maybe not the best way to play the position. There are 3 plans. The first one is to go c6, as I played in the game, which there I just settle for like a slightly worse position, but a stable one. The second one is, which I originally wanted to play, is a4. Now, if white takes here, then he will just have a bad pawn structure, so he doesn't want to do that. But b4 and now b5, this is the motive. And if he takes now, I will be able to take here. And I have this nice pawn formation now. The pawn on b5 is weak. So yeah, I thought about this during the game, but somehow I didn't feel right about it. So I just went for c6 instead. Also, what would be better in c6 is probably knight e4, queen c2, and then just f5, gaining space here. When I'm also for sure probably not worse here. Looks quite harmonious for black as well. But I went for c6. He took castle h6, just stopping bishop g5 and knight g5 at all costs. Rook d1, queen e7. So this was all pretty standard development here. And here I decided to take. And my point was that I don't really care about the a file, but instead I only care about the c file, just to attack the pawn on c4. He went knight d2. If b5, I intended knight d8 because now the pawn on b7 is protected, and he still has some issues with the pawn on c4. So we went knight d2. I went d5. Knight d4 right away would have been also an idea, probably better than d5 right away. But I played d5, takes, and now knight d4. And here he actually had a win with, I think it was queen e3. And after knight c2, I think he can just take here, take, and this is probably just winning for him. Let me just check. I think it was this line. Yeah, but this was not obvious during the game, and he also did not see it. Instead, he went for queen d3. So again, therefore, knight d4 first would be more accurate, and probably now I'm forcing him to play queen d3, because now queen e3 really doesn't work due to knight c2. And after queen d3, now I guess I can think about playing d5 as well. But yeah, he took knight d4, he missed queen e3, thank God. Now I took on d5, and here a lot of material disappeared from the board. Rook b1. By the way, if he would have taken on d5 first, takes here, and queen d4, I just thought I could play bishop c6, and I have, at least I felt like I should have enough compensation. The pawn on e2 is hanging. This bishop is very strong. King is a bit weak. I have rook d8 coming next move. So I felt like this should be all right for me. But yeah, this happened. Rook b1, now knight c6. He takes, and this endgame should not be... yeah, I mean, I'm the one being like slightly worse. I have to be careful because the pawn on d4 could become weak. But yeah, it's still unbelievable to me that I actually won this endgame. So I went rook c2, which was fine. Now knight d5, intending knight c3. He took king f1, and here I already kind of lost the thread. Because I thought somehow I can stay with this formation here, but after king e1 he's just intending rook to move the rook, and now king d1 is already in the air, and then rook b4. So here I realized my mistake and just went back, but still the position is somewhat okay. Now I gave the pawn and bishop g4, and I'm probably still not that much worse anyway, because my rook is active, my bishop is active, and yeah, the pawn on d3 is kind of a target. So yeah, it should be a draw, but of course that I won it is still unbelievable, as I said. So knight d4, rook a2, rook c1. Here he went f3, already a very risky move because it opens the second rank. I went back, knight f5 check, king f6, g4, bishop g6. And yeah, here it already really started to feel like something went wrong for him, because now my king is getting active. And yeah, the knight is a bit misplaced, so here already I started to feel like something is happening. Yeah, my king got active. Here it's starting to become already objectively probably lost. I think there was one moment here where I could win objectively. It was, let me see, rook e2. I played this, king f1, and yeah, king g3 was just a blunder. I missed it. He can take on g5. Instead, rook e6, for example, should be fairly easily winning, and then I'm just picking up the pawn on g4. But I went king g3. Now he took rook e6, knight h5. Now it's a draw again, king h4. But here he made this incredible blunder, knight f4, when after rook f6 I'm just winning the piece and therefore the game. Here his only chance was to go rook takes f7, bishop h5, and then to defend this draw endgame. Bishop and rook against rook is a draw with correct defense. But yeah, he went for this, and he played on a bit more, just being frustrated, but here he resigned because checkmate is coming with rook d1. So yeah, very lucky game for me, but yeah, it happens. Against Predke, I was the one being somewhat unlucky. So yeah, let's have a look at the next game. In the next game, I played against Manuel Petrosyan, a very strong grandmaster from Armenia, currently rated, I think, 2630. And I had the white pieces. I played him actually in one of the past events where I also played the Catalan with white and also won a pretty nice game. So it was kind of like a deja vu. But in this game, I went for queen a4. In the last one, I played queen c2, a6, and then a4. But I went for this line, queen c2, which is supposed to be alright for black, but I still just wanted to try it. And here already he went for a sideline of the sideline, which is knight e5. Knight c6 is kind of like the established move to equalize. But yeah, he went for knight d5. Now rook d1, and here knight c3. And this structure, of course, my king can become a bit weak sometimes, but he still has this issue with the backwards pawn, and he can often cannot get c5 in time. And he also in the game struggled a long time with getting it. If he goes to c5 now, I think he can just take. And if bishop takes, I have, for example, knight g5 with the checkmate threat on h7, and the bishop on b7 is hanging as well. And yeah, he cannot take with the knight, obviously, because the queen on d8 is hanging. So he developed the knight, rook c1. By the way, knight e5 is more accurate here, just going for immediate pressure. And after he takes, now I'm fighting for the c6 square. So this would have been more accurate in the game. I played rook c1 first, and now knight g5. The idea was just to get one knight to e4, and then again to hinder him from playing c5. He anyway played c5, which is, I think, not fully correct. I guess he thought that he will win back the pawn sooner or later, but it's just not really happening. In the game, I was a bit afraid about knight b4. The point was queen b3, now a5 is coming. And if a3, a4, I thought I'm in trouble here because queen c3, knight a2 is the fork. But actually later, after the game, I checked that knight takes e6 is some incredible draw here. Because if he takes here, then I'm up some material. But the line continued. Let me think. Knight takes e6. It was queen d7, queen takes b4. Now if he takes with the bishop, I have knight f6 check. So he has to take queen e6, now knight c5, and now the computer gave perpetual, I think, like this. So this was one of the many ways to achieve the 0-0 in this line. Also queen b1 I fought during the game, but here there was some issue. I think queen d5 was unpleasant when f5 is coming, the pawn on a2 is weak. So yeah, this pin is also unpleasant. So I think I would have gone for queen b3. Also, I thought about a4 here, but after takes, now I have to go queen c4, because after queen e4, again, queen d5 is quite unpleasant for me. But yeah, he went c5, now dc, queen e5, and just queen b3, protecting the pawn on a2. And he wanted to win back the pawn on c5 by doubling rooks. But I think what he underestimated was this exchange sacrifice. Now rook takes d5, I think a very good move. I could have also played it right away, rook d5. But I thought h4 is anyway useful, and I didn't see any other plan for him, basically, other than rook c8. And now I'm just getting the same position just with extra h4, which is super useful because now I went for h5, immediately firing up the attack even more. And he went rook c8, takes, rook h1, and here he can already resign, actually, because queen c7, queen d4. So my threat is either queen e5 or queen d4, and he cannot stop both of them. Queen d4, f6, queen d5 check, and he resigned because after king g7, there is rook h7, a very nice checkmate. Also knight e6 is, of course, there, but rook h7 wins on the spot. So a very nice game, I think. Very happy overall, and this, again, brought me pretty much back into the race for a very nice placement. In the next round, I played against the Iranian prodigy, but Bardia Daneshvar, who also won the Sharjah Open where I played. So if you win such a tournament, you have to have some skill for sure. Yeah, that was a very complicated game. He started with g3 on the first move. I went d5, and now we got this opening with quite an unusual move order. But anyway, and now he played for this double fianchetto. I also fianchettoed my bishop, and here we have this very old line, classical line of this double fianchetto, Queen's Indian type of position. I went for queen c8, which is one of the moves. The other move is d takes c4, bc4, and now knight c6. also one of the lines which is also supposed to be okay for black. But I think I still remembered queen c8. The point is I just want to go rook d8 and then knight c6. He went rook d1, queen c7 now. Now I just want to follow up with rook c8. He went knight b5, now queen b8, rook c1, and now a6. And here I went for b5, which is probably not the best. I also thought about just going back with queen c7 during the game, but I think what's probably best is just to go d4. And in this Benoni position, actually the knight probably cannot even go to e4 that well, because I have some... I have this discovery knight before, and I will probably just take the pawn on a2. So he would have to go to b1, for example, maybe. So d4 is probably the better choice here, but during the game I did not see this at all. I went for b5. Point is now he cannot take the pawn on b5 that well because I have rook a2 in the end. So he went for cd5, e5, d4, which very much surprised me. But then I saw that this position is actually very unclear. At first I thought it must be doing very well because b4, c3 is coming quickly, but he went a3 and yeah, then it wasn't so clear at all because I'm not getting b4 anyhow. But a3, the downside is now I get to place my knight on this nice square on b3, rook b1, and yeah, this was all very complicated but still somewhat in the range here. Knight d7, some strange moves jumping around with the knight to f4, and the critical moment came, I think, around here. Here he made some inaccurate decisions. Now c3, and his center looks nice, but the downside is often it can somewhat also collapse. c3, bishop c1, and queen c8, also a good move. Let me check if there was anything better, but I think it was good. Computer also says I can just take on c1 and then go g6, followed by bishop g7. So here I'm already much better, according to the computer. Also knight b c5 apparently is one option. Didn't consider that at all. But queen c8, my point is I'm hitting the knight on f5, and I also have this threat of c2. So he played knight h6, forcing me to ruin my my structure on the king side. And I followed up with queen f5, which is inaccurate. I should go bishop g7 instead, when here I have a much better version, because in the end I have knight c5. And yeah, let me just take rook b1. I can just take the pawn e6. So yeah, that would have been much better. Bishop g7, or there was also this idea with queen c4, which somehow during the game I did not consider at all. But after he takes, now next move I will be able to take the pawn on e5 when he is the one who has to think about achieving a draw. Instead I went queen f5, e6, and now it became pretty dangerous for me because my king is just quite weak in the long run. Computer says h5 is apparently the only move to hold the balance, but yeah, I did not consider this for 1 second. I took, and bishop d6, missing his next move, rook d5. I thought I'm taking on f4 next and the pawn on e6 is weak, but rook d5, and now I'm just more or less getting checkmated. Yeah, here again I should probably take on d1, and the computer screams this h5 move. I could also go for something like bishop c5. Position is still somewhat unclear, but my king is just very unsafe, so probably overall it's easier to play for white. So bishop d6, big mistake, and now he just got the full attack, and in the end here g4, another very strong move, and my queen is somewhat out of moves, out of squares. Queen d3, e7, and yeah, if I take the queen, then he promotes to a queen and he's simply a rook up and checkmating me. So I took on e7, but after queen e6 here I let him checkmate me, and yeah, I lost this game. Very complicated fight. I definitely had my chances as well, but yeah, nothing I can do. He played also, at least practically speaking, he found some nice chances. So yeah, let's have a look at the next game. In round 8 of the tournament, I was super lucky. So I was so losing for all of the game. Let's see how I managed to save this position. So we got this very topical line, this Tarash endgame. I was black against a young, I think it's also an Azerbaijani player, Samadov Reed. And he went for this endgame, which is very topical, but I could not recall how the line went. I'm still not sure. I haven't checked if bishop b4 is the move or not. King e8. I should start with this. King e8, and if long castle, now knight c6, of course. This was the line, yeah. I mixed it up. I went bishop e4 first, long castle, king e8, and here, of course, he has this move knight takes e4. So yeah, I just mixed up the line here. And here, I should go for something like king f7 probably, when he's for sure better in this endgame. He has the bishop pair. Computer says already +1. I thought it's still somewhat alright. But yeah, instead I went for the forcing variation with knight takes e4, thinking that I have some practical chances here. But after g3, bishop is coming here, and I just cannot develop my queen side at all. King f6 was still a nice try, knight f7. But here after a3, actually I thought here that a5 is probably the best try. But the point, bishop takes b7, rook a7 takes, and now bishop d6. But I really dislike this endgame here. I thought I'm just... I don't have any chances and I have to suffer. But yeah, it's still much better than what I had in the game. So a5 would have been much better. And if rook d1, now bishop d6 is the point. When it's not entirely easy for white. Computer says rook d3 is very strong, but not also an easy move to find, I think. So this would have been much better than what I played, starting with a5, because here the issue was he gets b4, and now rook b8. And yeah, now if I move the knight, he will just take on b7, and if king e7, I thought he will just take here, and after king d6, bishop b7, I resign. But now I see that the engine finds again some brilliant idea with knight c6, when, okay, this is also should be lost. Takes b7, and white is a pawn up. So yeah, nice idea, but still losing for me. Instead I went for a5. He took on d6, and now I'm just a clear exchange down. But somehow I continued fighting. Here, knight e6, I didn't want to go rook f2, because after rook f1, the conversion is very easy. I don't have any counterplay at all anymore. Instead I went knight e6, takes, and now rook b2. So if I get knight takes b4, I already have some checkmate ideas. So he went rook d2, very understandable, and now we have this endgame, which again is totally lost for me. But yeah, now I was starting to feel somewhat like I could maybe hold the draw. h5, rook d8, planning to infiltrate on h8 and hit my pawn. Maybe h6 was a safer alternative, but yeah, I thought it anyway doesn't matter anymore, so I will just push my pawns, and maybe I'm able to trade some pawns with g5 and h4. So I went g5, rook g8, bishop d4. Now trying to find some counterplay here. Again, I think I defended this as good as it can get. King e5, king e2, knight e6, and now I went for h4. Of course, I'm still completely lost here. I thought after h5 I'm probably just resigning, because he's just pushing the pawn, and I have to give a piece, and then I'm lost. But he went for bishop c2 here, and knight d7, which set up a very nice trap, which he ran right into. Namely h6, which is the most logical move, but now knight f8. And he probably saw h7 now, when after knight g6, bishop g6, I'm lost because he's queening on the next move, but I can take on h7. And this endgame might already be a draw. So then he was probably like somewhat panicking already, and went rook g7, takes. And this endgame, yeah, is probably a draw already. He went for this, he exchanged the bishop, and now it's a draw for sure. This is a very well-known constellation, and he tried this for 50 moves, but there's just no way for white to break through. The only thing I have to be careful is to here step back with the king, because if I play bishop b2, then f5 comes, and then he's just picking up the pawn on e6. So this is the only thing I have to be careful about, and yeah, he tried everything he could, but then it was just declared a 50 move draw. So I was quite lucky in this game, but yeah, also nice for the standings. And let's have a look at the last game of the tournament. Coming into the last game of the tournament, I already knew that draw would most likely be enough for me to qualify, since 5 out of 9 is usually enough. So I approached the game very solidly. I played against Subramaniyam, hopefully I pronounced it correctly. Another prodigy from India, very young and already close to 2600. So I tried to stay very solid. In this game I went for this line against the Queen's Indian with a3. And the idea is just to prepare knight c3 without allowing bishop b4. And now I went for this, again, super boring and drawish line with queen a4 check. And I'm just exchanging queens, knight b5. This I still somewhat knew. And this position is maybe slightly better for white. It's sometimes if I manage to keep the bishop pair in the long run, but black is just way too active for me to actually claim an advantage. e3, rook c8, this was all pretty standard, and yeah, f5 cementing the knight on e4, and here he decided to take on d2. Now knight takes d2, point being if he takes on g2 I always have rook g1 when I win back the pawn with interest. So we went bishop b7 back. Now f3, g5, and here this was, I think, a very nice idea with h4, because he doesn't want to go h6 here, because then I get control of the h file. And he also doesn't want to take, because then I will play rook h1, and I will pick up this pawn. If rook g8, I can just go king f2, and we'll pick up the pawn when black has the worse structure. So he went g4. Now I took on h7, knight f6, bishop g6, and here another good idea with king f2 followed by king g3. And now I'm stopping this pawn, and the knight always has to stay here to protect the pawn on g4. So here I already felt like I could play for something, but he played rook h8, which was a nice idea. The point is rook h6, kicking out the bishop, and here I decided to repeat moves like this. Because anyway, as I said before, I was almost certain that a draw would be enough for me to qualify. I also saw one nice idea. It was here to play on for a win. I think it was with e4. No, it was, sorry, it was in this moment e4. And I just want to push e5 next, and he doesn't want to go e5 himself, because then I have bishop f5 check in many cases when the king is in trouble. So here rook h6, and I briefly calculated it during the game, this line e5, but I felt like I don't want to risk it, but it would have been a nice try actually. Because if he takes here, these positions, I'm a pawn down for now, but the h-pawn is very dangerous in the long run, and these positions can be quite dangerous for black, because I'm winning the pawn on g4 back, and then the h-pawn will be a long-term nuisance for black. The same is if he takes here first, and rook g6 takes, and now rook f1, for example, when also here black is definitely suffering. Rook f1, knight f1, and black has to be quite careful to hold the draw. So I could have tried this, but again, I just was happy with the draw. Day was over, played a good tournament, and yeah, I was able to finish with 5 out of 9. So I hope you enjoyed today's recap of the tournament. As I've mentioned, I'm playing against Rasmus Svanne tomorrow. So I will see you in the recap after my match against the German Grandmaster.